to the tech.mn CTO Spotlight powered by Livefront. I'm your host, Jac Stark, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nels Pederson from Livefront. Today, we are interviewing the Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer from SPS Commerce, Jamie Thingelstad. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello, good to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. How about we start off with your journey of what led you to SPS Commerce?
Absolutely. So I've been lucky enough to be CTO for SPS Commerce now for just over 7 years, leading a technology team that spans the globe at around just under 500 people. Just for background, SPS Commerce runs the retail network that connects more than 90,000 companies in retail together and allows them to work more efficiently across all of their trading partner connections. We're a publicly traded company. We just celebrated our 78th quarter of consecutive growth, which is an amazing milestone that is really unparalleled. And my personal background, I've been a CTO now for over 20 years, and I've done that both in early stage companies as small as a handful of folks building a product and starting a company up, as well as large companies like SPS Commerce, Dow Jones, and CBS MarketWatch back in the day. My background is in media, as well as financial services, social, and retail. And so I've been building large-scale technology solutions for those industries for my entire career, and it's been just awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious, what is it like? What are some of the nuances and differences between being a CTO at a startup and then all the way to the largest of the large being a CTO at a publicly traded company like SPS?
Yeah, well, so what I'd say, Nels, is that my background, I've always been in growth companies. So one of the things that I would say that unifies my entire history has been being in a company that's growing into a market. And in a growth company, you always have to constantly revisit everything around you because as you grow, things evolve and things change. So the one constant there is change, whether that's the company and its products changing to meet the market, the needs of the team changing as you evolve and hit that market. And then even as a leader, you have to change and evolve as the company changes its needs. And so that's always been a big push. And when you apply a public lens to that, it really just increases the scrutiny on all of that because you have the public markets weighing in on how fast are you doing that? Are you doing it fast enough? You have the kind of additional scrutiny on your financials, that making sure that you hit your quarterly results is incredibly important. Every investor in the world is looking at those. And so there's just a tremendously higher level of scrutiny. And I'd say that the stakes are higher in all regards when it comes to a public company. It's a high bar to become a public company. Very few companies ever get there. And to stay there and continue to grow in that is difficult and requires you to constantly be pushing forward as fast as you possibly can. So, in one hand, in a private organization, you have a bit more control over the message that it's your investors that you have to focus on. It's your customers that you have to focus on. You have a much larger audience to serve as a public company. The other thing I would say is that just by its nature, most public companies are larger, and so in a public company, you have to lead at scale, and you have to be operating at scale. And again, that's just something that when you get to having thousands or tens of thousands of employees, it's just a very different thing than having tens or hundreds and having thousands of customers as opposed to hundreds of customers. So there's a scale aspect to it that I think is a big part of being a public company.
Can you talk a little bit more about the growth part of that, specifically with your team. How has it changed since you came to SPS Commerce, and how have you approached managing a global team?
Yeah. Yeah, so in the time that I've been at SPS in those 7 years, the size of the company as a whole has nearly doubled, as has the size of the team that I oversee. Um, and the and it is a global team, so we have people in Eastern Europe. We have a large presence in Kyiv, Ukraine. We have a large number of team members in India. We have team members in multiple locations in North America, including Toronto, Little Falls, New Jersey, and then our main headquarters here in Minneapolis. And then we have a technology presence in Melbourne, Australia as well. And I would say that leading a team globally means that you have to figure out how to connect across all those different regions and create a vision of what it is that we are trying to, what the problems are that we're trying to solve, and how we're doing that. That has to span all those various areas. And so you have to make sure that you have good alignment across all of your teams and all your locations. You have to keep the message pretty simple. It's hard to convey complex kind of approaches across a global team and across all those various time zones. But if you can make sure that everybody's aligned and focused on solving the same problems, you have a simple message, you can be incredibly effective and get a tremendous amount done. And so, over the years, we've learned that we've had to reinvent those processes multiple times as we've scaled, and just to accommodate that growth in the size of the team. But it's awesome to see what you can do when you have that scale all pointed at the right thing.
Super interesting. How does a company like SPS, and I'd be curious to hear your involvement in this process, how do you approach building out a team in a different country? So you've identified Ukraine as this is an opportunity of a place where we would like to build a team.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start?
Yeah. Well, for us, we've actually had the benefit of starting often with an acquisition. So when we look at those locations that we have, many of them came as a result of us acquiring a company that was in our space and then building off of the talent that they had established already. And in the case of, say, Ukraine, it's been really awesome because what we found is a group of developers that have a lot in common with our teams globally. They're very aggressive adopters of technology. They love to experiment and try things. They like to push the envelope, um, and so it works very well across our various locations. The main areas that we're focusing on building out more talent are in our Ukrainian office, our Toronto offices, and our Minneapolis office. Those are the focus areas for us for additional talent as we continue to build out our team.
And what makes your team different, and what do you look for in people that you're hiring?
The first thing I'd say is that all great technology teams are fundamentally learning organizations. And so at the very core in technology, I think that you have to be a lifelong learner. Most of the tools, techniques, capabilities that we build with today, most people didn't know about a few years ago. And so that never-ending passion to learn and adopt new things is key. I think also that doesn't just end with the technology. Very important is understanding the customer problem you're trying to solve, which, by the way, could be an end user, a customer of your product, or it could be somebody in your company that's trying to do their job better. And really being able to understand what that problem is so that you can bring the right mix of technology and the right understanding of what I call the art of the possible. That's absolutely key as well to doing that. So we look for that. I also look for how do we bring in more diversity into the team? How do we bring in different perspectives? One of the things that we have found is that bringing in folks from boot camps or through our internship program has been incredibly important because they often bring very innovative thinking with them. One of the observations I would share is that it there isn't a innovation isn't only the domain of highly experienced technologists. It can come from anywhere. And some of the most interesting things that we've seen are when we've brought in talent, even from other parts of the organization that may not have 10 years of coding experience, but they understand that problem domain and they can bring a different perspective to solving that problem that's great. So.
For a company as large as SPS, not only in size of your own team, but you also, you're working with the largest retailers in the world. How does that, knowing that you have a product that is also in some ways very custom to the customer that you're working with, how does that guide your product strategy? So create a solution that can be scaled while also giving a solution that's unique to whatever customer you're working with.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that's part of our one of our core strengths. So we have the capabilities in our core products, and I'll just use our fulfillment product as an example. Our fulfillment product allows retailers and suppliers, as well as other members of the retail ecosystem, to work together more seamlessly and efficiently. However, in order for that to work, we have to connect to thousands of retailers and accommodate all of the unique business cases that they need to run their businesses. And then we bring that know-how, which, by the way, is not just tech, right? One of the things that we often say is that for SPS Commerce, our products are the people, the processes, and the technology. And so we bundle that all together to really be the solution for our suppliers and retailers to be able to work together. So that means that we allow for a lot of product extension. That means that we productize as much as we possibly can to get the kind of leverage and benefit to thousands of customers, but we leave hooks open so that our teams as well as our customers can extend that solution into those specific niches that they may have, or we build that directly into our network so that we can accommodate that for them. So it is this kind of in a way almost customization at scale to make that work.
In regards to COVID, I have two questions. One being, how has it changed the way your team works and how do you keep them going? And then two, how has that changed business for you?
Well, obviously, when the pandemic really hit, we immediately had all of our teams begin working from home, like many companies did. And I was very happy to see that all the preparation we'd put into having that capability at hand worked extremely well. I was incredibly proud of how the team adapted, and not just technologists, right? I mean, all of a sudden, this is salespeople, it's customer support people, it's implementation analysts, it's financial analysts, it's HR people, everybody, now in this distributed environment, and we were able to make that pivot with absolutely minimal disruption in our operations. So it was extraordinarily smooth. So we've continued to do that remote work, and I think like many companies, we've now relied heavily on a lot of the online collaboration platforms, doing a lot with Zoom, doing a lot with Slack, doing a lot with the Atlassian suite, the Salesforce suite, etc. So that's all worked very well. One of the interesting things, though, is that for a global team, it's resulted in some kind of unexpected benefits, right? For our global team members, they now are connected into our team in a way where they feel like they're absolutely equal with everybody else. The comment that I was sharing with somebody was, when you're on Zoom and everybody's a box on the screen, I don't know if you're a mile away or 3,000 miles away. I might tell by if it's light or dark in your windows. But other than that, you have the same access to information, the collaboration, So we've actually seen a very strong positive reaction from our global team members that they feel more connected into their teams than they ever have before. And so, it really tells us that it's hard to operate in a hybrid environment with some people physical and some people remote. And I think that we'll absolutely take many of these practices that we've adopted and extend those well beyond the timeline of this pandemic. I
Interesting.
forget the second part. I think you had a second part.
Yeah. How has it changed business for you guys?
So, we look at what we've seen with the pandemic is that it's accelerated the future, right? So the retail landscape has moved years and months in a very quick timeline, as we've all seen, right? As consumers, all of a sudden I can go to a retailer and I can sit in my car and they bring it out to my car. Curbside pickup. All of a sudden, having product information on your website and being able to facilitate an order for traditional bricks and mortar retailers, that was kind of a nice to have, and all of a sudden it became absolutely critical. And the interesting part also is that that applies to every retailer at every level. So sure, the big retailers were in a good position, but just as important, the corner retailer down the street from you all of a sudden needed to have an online presence. And so what we've seen is that this has accelerated retail evolution tremendously. And along with that, that's provided us an ability to help retailers and suppliers do that pivot. Um, so, using our solutions, they're able to connect with, if you're a retailer and all of a sudden you're out of a product and you need more suppliers to get it from, SPS is a path to doing that via our retail network. Um, so it's been clearly some parts of retail have been actually very positively impacted by the pandemic. Others have been negatively impacted. We work with all retail in every industry, and we've been able to be there to help them make those pivots and move faster as they've had to adapt to this environment.
Yeah, along that vein, from a product strategy perspective, I have to imagine within the last couple of months, a lot of things have popped up that are like, let's put out the fire reactionary. How do you balance that with long-term strategy, knowing that many things are shifting? There is an immediate need to help support your customers right now, but you also want to make sure you're pushing forward to knock out other goals that are longer term. How does that all work? I have to imagine it's a complex and delicate thing.
Yeah. Well, what we saw happen is when the March, April, when the pandemic hit and we saw the lockdowns and everything was kind of up in the air, we definitely, I mentioned earlier that change is a constant in a growing company, and we said, okay, well, we need to reevaluate where are our product investments going, and do we have and we didn't look at it as a massive departure, but we said, you know what, over the next 12 to 18 months, there's parts of our product portfolio that now we think are going to get a ton of attention and need to be adopted much more quickly. And some other areas where we could slow down, where we felt like, okay, that's not going to be as hot or as important during these next 12 to 18 months. So we use a portfolio approach, and we looked at the entire product portfolio and made a number of decisions about how we felt that we should shift those investments around. But by the way, that's not something that was special for that pandemic response. To your broader point, we do that on a quarterly basis, always looking at where are we making our additional investments, and what are those investments? How are those going to turn into value in the marketplace? And then the enabling technologies that go along with that as well. And so I tend to focus on making sure that we are always thinking about the value in the market, and then we associate the things that enable that, the longer term investments, we associate that along with those. I will say that in a market where you have a high degree of unpredictability, which is what the pandemic has brought to everybody, we did we did reduce our horizon, and we said, you know what, when the market is steady and we can have a high degree of confidence in our predictions, we're going to invest 2, 3 years down the road. Right now, we said, you know what, we're going to pull that back. We're going to pull that back to be more like 12 to 18 months, and shorten that horizon of investment, so that we can be more nimble and dynamic as things change.
So you've been incredibly active in the Minnesota tech community. You've been a past board member of Ministar. You have a newsletter that you send out. What sparked your interest in getting more involved in Minnesota tech?
Um, well, so I've chosen to make the Twin Cities my home, and I want to have a vibrant technology ecosystem here in the Twin Cities. And I think that, giving back to that and helping make that a reality, just has always been important to me. I give credit to, you know, uh, Ben Edwards and Luke Francel and others connected to things like the very first minibar, when that happened. And, I was one of the 200 or so folks that attended that. And it was amazing to just see this technology community coming together and sharing knowledge and best practices, uh, uh, with everybody, just freely and openly. And I love that so much. I've never missed a mini bar, and it's just been a kind of a bedrock, for me. Uh, I think giving back to the community is important, because if we're going to have a community of companies, we need a community of people in technology that are thriving, that are going to help make those companies real. Um, and one of the reasons why Ministar for years was where I put my attention. I saw that as kind of being, I always use those terms as like a flywheel for the tech community, because it wasn't just about starting new companies. It wasn't just about, um, uh, you know, one particular component. It was just connecting people who are passionate about technology and catalyzing that activity. And so, I just always loved that mission and vision. I was, lucky enough to be the founding chairperson for the board when the board did get founded, and was honored to serve out a full 9 years as a board member there. I've now uh, I've now moved on to the Minnesota Technology Association, so I'm a board member now at MinTech, and am looking to take that same kind of passion that we've built around people in the technology community and make that happen as well for companies in the technology community. Because I think that there is these kind of the level of the individual, and then if we can get the companies in the technology ecosystem in the Twin Cities catalyzed as well, that could be incredibly powerful and a game changer for things like bringing in, talent into the market, bringing more diverse talent into the market, bringing in more companies into the market, all of which will continue to just make that flywheel go faster and faster.
Yeah, I think a very interesting and important thing there is to not only highlight your personal involvement, but you, before it was cool, I guess you did a really interesting and good job of getting SPS a large, prominent company that really went from early stage to public in Minnesota, plugging into that technologist and technology community, which is incredibly important. And so I'm kind of curious for the folks that are the other Jamies out there who are technology leaders at larger companies, who are trying to be more innovative, who want to engage with this group of really innovative thinkers in Minnesota. How do you recommend that they get involved?
Um, I mean, on the broadest sense, I'd say any way possible, any way that you know, I tend to think, making sure that you take the time, and it doesn't matter if you're a CIO or CTO at a large company or a manager, director level. It doesn't matter, right? If you're passionate about technology, this community is you want to be part of this community. So going to an event, whether that's it could be a meetup, it could be something like the annual Tech Connect event that MTA MinTech runs. or minibar, which is coming up in the next couple of or in the next few weeks. Um, I think just getting involved and attending as a member is the first step. Second, then I think is engaging your organization and catalyzing your organization to be part of that. And I think that SPS, we host community events, we sponsor community events, our team members attend and present at community events. And I'd love to see all of the other technology organizations, large and small, doing the same. It will continue to help the community just grow and get better. And by the way, I think that the Twin Cities community has done a pretty good job of that. I mean, we have a very vibrant ecosystem. Beta.mn is doing great work. I think tech.mn, I love the work that tech.mn is doing. And I just think that we're punching above our weight, so to speak, in that effort. And I think that we just need to keep doing it. I think sometimes there's some impatience around like, well, why aren't more things happening faster? Um, I just look at this as like this is a community investment. I'm going to keep making that investment, and I'm gonna trust that that will result in good positive outcomes.
So you've been a CTO for quite a while. I'd love to hear more about how you've grown as a person. What have been some of your biggest learning milestones, and where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, I've been a CTO now for 2 decades plus, which it still kind of makes me a little confused how time has flown. Um, the I would say that my biggest learning over those years just has been how important core leadership is in technology teams for CTOs. And so what I mean by that is I think a lot of times, particularly for CTOs, there's this intense focus on the tech and not enough focus on what are the business problems that you're trying to solve and how are you enabling and connecting with the people that are solving those problems. And so when I think of where I've really invested my time as I've continued to grow my career, it's on making sure that you connect with people, that you really you understand the importance that that plays in delivering the kind of solutions and capabilities that you wanna have. I think too often, particularly as a CTO, people get very focused on, what's the framework of the day, what's the technology solution of the day. Those are important, don't get me wrong. You need that, but it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need to go beyond that to really understand the customer problem, what's the business value, and what are the core motivators of the team that you're building, and how are you enabling them to deliver an amazing solution.
So two plus decades now as CTO. I think it's probably easy for people to forget that you're still learning something new every day, and you're still facing challenges, and you have the experience to know how to best approach those challenges. What you look back kind of early on in your career as you ran into hurdles as a CTO versus now, Jamie, 20 plus years later, what are some of the differences in how you approach problems and how you help your company grow in times of question?
Um, what I would say is that you get more comfortable with the fact that you don't have to have the answer for everything, right? I mean, I have tremendous technologists in my team that know so much more than I ever could have known about the types of solutions that we're building and how we're building them, and really focusing on how they can deliver that value and be as great as they can be in those roles and capacities. Um, I think always making sure that a very tactical thing that I've done over the years is on a regular basis, I do a stop list and a start list. So I look at it and say like, okay, what are the things that I'm doing now that I should stop doing? And maybe those should be delegated, or maybe those should be just, maybe they don't need to happen anymore. And what are the things that you should start doing? Where are you not where are you not active where you need to? And I think that applies, by the way, to the problems that you're solving in your company, and even like the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And by the way, the faster your company is growing, the more often you need to do that, right? If you're in a really fast-growing company, you might need to do that every quarter. So I think constantly reevaluating and kind of retuning your objectives and what you're working on, that helps everybody around you also grow. Um, and by the way, I think also, like, I would add into that being being a little vulnerable and sharing those stories with people, and telling people, hey, I'm still learning too, and this is how I'm engaging in that learning process, and how I'm working to improve in what I do. That creates a space where people are encouraged to do the same. Um, you know, yeah. So those are just some of the handful of ways.
Yeah. On that last point, as an executive, what do you have I'm curious, do you have a group of peers that you'll go to with questions that are facing similar problems? What sort of role does mentorship play in your development, even to this day?
I still have multiple people that I think of as mentors. Some of them would know that, and some I think of as a mentor, but they wouldn't, maybe they may not know that, right? I learn a tremendous amount from those around me. One of the things that I always think about is, you know, even on a day-to-day basis, when you're operating inside of an organization, what can you learn, borrow, steal from others that are operating around you that you see working, and then bring it into your own toolbox to be more effective. I've had the pleasure of being able to work with hundreds of very, very capable executives, and I've learned from as many of them as I possibly can. And so I think continuing to do that is important. um, you're never done with being mentored and coached yourself. I think the second you think you're done with that, I think probably that's when you're going to stop growing. And so always focusing on that is something that it's been kind of key to me in my own development. Jack mentioned the newsletter that I do. That's actually a way for me to show, well, here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm educating myself here on. Here's what I'm focusing on. And if others want to follow along in that path, they can, and kind of see what wisdom they take out of that journey as well.
So speaking of learning, are there any types of technology that you're excited about outside of work?
Yeah, so I've been, for a long time now, I've always been very passionate about privacy online. And so, one of the is I'm a huge proponent of technology. I'm a huge proponent of the web. I love the ecosystem that we've built and that surrounds us, but I worry a lot about our privacy and how the what I refer to as the constant surveillance affects us as people and as individuals. And so I am really excited about the fact that we're seeing some really good technology being developed to help people with that. I think that stuff starts with things like what people would often think of as ad blockers, but has built into some of the browser technology that is coming out that will really help defend individuals uh, and protect their privacy. And so I'm enthusiastic about what I see happening in the space of managing your own privacy and protecting from surveillance. Um, and and I think that's just going to be absolutely critical. I mean, with the pandemic, we've all shifted so much of our life online, even more than was there before, and making sure that we have privacy as we do that, I think is critical.
Absolutely. Well, for people who are interested in following along with your story, where can they find you online?
You can find me on my personal website, thingelstad.com. And if you want to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, that's at weekly.thingelstad.com.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks, Jamie.
All right. Have a good day.